Welcome to the Dog Trainers Podcast,
a podcast created by dog trainers for dog trainers or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend.
Okay, we are back. Thanks again so much, guys, for listening to the Dog Trainers Podcast. Just as a quick reminder, this is episode 3 of season 2. Now, before the break here, we were talking about the more logistical side of building an official business, right? The LLC, getting insurance, keeping good books, looking out for a good tax person. So now we wanted to get into the other element of building a business, because this is why building a business requires somebody to look for help. Because while we're sure you could do your books and your taxes and all that other stuff, it gets really difficult to do that while you also have to wear the hat of head of your company. Because when you're the one in charge of your company, one big thing that you really have to focus on, which is our first point here, is you have to be able to decide actively, day by day, what the ethos of your company is going to be. And what I mean by that is, what is the lifeblood of your company going to look like? Are you guys going to be like kind of laid back and different? Are you guys going to be very much like by the numbers? Are you guys going to be, this kind of new take on something? Are you guys, there's all these different ways that you, as the head of your business with employees who look up to you, to not only provide them with a workplace that meets the basic requirements like clean and safe and comfortable and so on, but
not just employees, clients too.
Clients, of course, but what's the atmosphere like? Like an easy example would be like a college. Like the atmosphere of a university is very much learner friendly, learner heavy. There's books, there's libraries, there's professors with all these experiences and students from different places of the world. But you have to cultivate that kind of thing, because within the dog training world, a lot of dog training sometimes can be like old timey craftsman style. Like, I'm not going to give away my secrets. And I mean, fine, if that's how you want to run yourself, like fine. I'm not saying anything against it. I'm just saying that that's one way. And a very, very different way is like, the people who build their businesses, almost entirely online. Like I'm thinking of like Tommy, Sean, like people who they kind of grew up with YouTube and really utilized that tool to their advantage. And now they're super well-established trainers and doing all these cool things, but they took the complete opposite approach. It wasn't like, It's my info and you can't have it. It was like, here, let me show you my journey, even as I personally grow. So, just developing your ethos, deciding how your stuff's going to roll. That's something that we want to make sure that you pay close attention to, so that you're cultivating what you want to cultivate.
Yeah. Now, like even for my own brand, right? Canis Behavior and Training, right? Like the word canis, right? In my mind, I wanted to think of, okay, I hated the word canine, right? Like just everything is canine, canine this, canine that, canine, blah, 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 right? So I said, what's better than canine? I said, well, the genus for dogs is Canis, right? Canis familiaris, right? And so I thought, all right, I like the word canis. It's 5 letters. It's like, apple. Right. It's easy to spell. It's also 5 letters. I said, it's easy. It's right there. And in my mind, I said, I just wanted to be different. I worked at a place, by the way, guys, called Canines Only. Right. So again, 10 years of canines. I wanted something different. And so in my mind, I said, okay, so what's different? Like, what is everyone doing? Everyone's doing the board and train thing. Everyone's doing the private training thing. And in my mind, I said, okay, how can I make my company different? Like, what's my vision for my company? And I said, I wanted to create an educational platform, right? Or I wanted Canis to be synonymous with dog education, right? And so how did I do that? Well, through developing group classes, through developing workshops, through working with rescues, doing what I wanted. And I also wanted to hire trainers on who are excellent educators, right? And so kind of creating that ethos, because that spirit of the company and understanding a clear goal of what I wanted this company to be, it helped put me in a trajectory to be able to grow and succeed and hit a checkpoint and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So just kind of having that clear vision of what you see yourself doing over the next 5, 10, 15 years, and what you want to see be established is super duper important, right? Now, when I was developing who my audience is, right, this was really hard, because I had to be like, well, I'm really good with old people. Like old people love me for some reason, right? I'm super sweet, super polite, and they love me. I said, but I'm really good with my peers. So I'm looking at it like, okay, do I want to be good with old people? Do I want to be good with people my parents' age? Do I want to be good with my peers? Do I want to be good with people younger than me? Like, who is my target audience? And generally, our target audience is people who own dogs, right? And all of them own dogs, but all of them have different needs for dog training, right? So I narrowed down my generation. Like I want the generation, the millennials. I want the Generation Zers. Like those are my target audience. So that would just be an example of like figuring out who your target audience is. People who want to put in work with their dogs, people who, who care about their dogs, people who the dog is more than just an accessory or an item, right? And these are just things that, again, these aren't original ideas. I'm sure a lot of the listeners have very similar goals to this, but writing them down and making them clear, like a vision board almost of what you want your company to be, is super important, because that'll also help you with your marketing and how you approach training and how you differentiate what it is that you do versus what the trainer down the street does. And when people can really fall in love with what your company's culture is about and what your company's message is about, that's when that's when you start blowing up.
100%. And not only that, but it helps you streamline more than you would think. So here's a clear, a real world example. Okay. So shout out to Sean O'Shea, who's a good friend. We had him on the podcast. Sean, one cool thing that I've always gravitated to the Good Dog for was how open they were about stuff like this. I remember watching one of the Good Dog's Q&A Saturdays on YouTube. It's years ago now, but I'm sure it's still up, right? And Sean was talking about this essentially. It was a combination of our points here, which was deciding what the ethos of the company, deciding what your target audience is going to be, and a point that I wanted to bring up because it all comes together, deciding on your pricing. And here's how he tied those things together, okay? So the Good Dog, for those of you who may not know, at least as of right now, I'm fairly confident, and this was definitely the case at the time, they train with a very streamlined curriculum. It's e-collar stuff, mostly geared toward dogs who are like reactive or very hyper. Like, it's like a very specific product, right? And of course, when you're doing basically only e-collar work, you have a certain you've taken your broad net and shrunk it down, because a lot of people are nervous about e-collar. A lot of people, so you're not like this wide possibility of like a kennel that does this and does that, let's say. So when Sean brought this up, he made a very fascinating point. And it was this. It was like, okay, guys, so obviously I'm basically cutting my potential client base in half. Or am I? Because when I decided to put out all this content online, naturally, we get the love and everything, and we get the hate and everything that comes with, e-collar training from people who don't think you should be doing it. But here's why we decided to do it. It wasn't because we wanted to ruffle feathers. We don't want to piss anybody off. We just want to cater to our audience. Meaning, if you're against e-collar, if you're, like nervous about this or that, you were never going to utilize my services anyway. So it doesn't really behoove me to try to make content that appeals to you. Instead, I'm going to make the content that appeals directly to my personal audience, people who need rehab work with their dog via e-collar training that we can provide here at the Good Dog. And not only that, but because we're a more specialized service, let's say, that also allows me to figure out my pricing. He was talking about the pain point of entry is a little bit different. Like if you want to get your dog trained, you can pay $250 and go do 6 lessons at Petco and save a lot of money. I mean, if it's a puppy, like, it's an option. Petco training is fine. Like it'll do a good job. My point is, his point was rather, if you've got like a very simple, straightforward case, like a puppy, you have more options. Therefore, there's more competition, let's say, for who wants to train your dog. Therefore, naturally, with the whole supply and demand dynamic, prices will be lower. Whereas if you have a very specific deal, like let's say a big, powerful dog that's reactive and needs a very certain type of training, well, not all dog trainers do that, which means the marketplace is a bit smaller, which means the potential to charge, let's say, like weekly for board and train prices or private lesson prices can be a bit higher. Because you can, and because you're more rare, like a diamond, you're kind of worth it. You know what I'm saying? So it was a fascinating conversation that they had, but that was something that I just wanted to make sure, was brought up as an example of like, when you're deciding what your audience is and what your company is, it really helps you decide what your pricing is going to be.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
Episodes, by the way, for Sean are 37 and 38.
Yeah, check out episode 37, 38. It's a 2-part episode. Really good interview with Sean O'Shea. Super cool. All right. So we had talked about, what's the ethos of the company? What's the target? And then and then also figuring out what your pricing is based on that. And then what you have to look at is, obviously we know how important having an online presence is, right? Nowadays, if we don't have, a TikTok or an Instagram or a Yelp or a Google or a website, right? Websites kind of seem like a thing of the past because you just kind of want to give people your Instagram or your TikTok, right? But still, again, across platforms, cross generations, there's different avenues that people go through to get information, to see quality control, to see results, to hear testimonies, all that stuff. And so we have to make sure that we are well represented on the internet. Okay. So I would say first one is the website. Yes, the website is still a very, very important part of owning a business, right? On that website, you can have a lot of links to your social media so people can actually see what you're about. But the website is kind of serves as the modern day brochure. Like, what is this company about? What is it that you do? Is it possible for me to maybe get to know the team? Is it possible for me to get to see the facility, the dynamic, how you guys train, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's almost like a gateway to a bunch of other things.
Totally. Then the crazy thing about a website is you made a great point with it just now, because obviously we do want to get into social media and all that too. But before we do, Brent made an interesting point. It was very interesting, genuinely, is you said the website seems old school. That's fascinating to me because the internet's not that old. It's like it was barely even a thing when we were growing up. Like, it existed, but it was like dial up and, So we did an episode a while back on like old school marketing. And if somebody wants to look at a website as an old school marketing tactic, I'll tell you what, man, old school marketing still works. And here's how. So not only is Brent 100% correct, you look at a website as like somebody, here's a big thing a consumer wants to do, especially when it's a service like dog training, because it's a product like I buy it and I have it. A service is like, well, what are you going to do with my dog? Where's he going to be? How's his life going to look while he's there? Like, So you want something that if the client wants to look into this with a lot of detail, the detail is there. Not everybody's going to bother, and it's no harm, no foul. But if somebody wants to really deep dive into your stuff, your information, they can do that. Now, the way that the website helps you market, aside from that, obviously, is it gives a lot of behind the scenes legitimacy to your other stuff. Meaning, okay, you've got an Instagram, you've got a Facebook and a TikTok and all that cool new stuff. However, if you don't have a website with decent backlinks, and I'll explain what that is in a second, your website ain't getting much traction, which means you're not getting in front of a lot of eyes. Because even if having a website seems old-timey, you know what's not old-timey? Looking for businesses online. Exactly. Like, I just Google Mexican restaurants near me, you know what I mean? Gas stations near me, like whatever. So the way to show up on those search results is to make sure that your website is active. It's getting traction. It's got solid backlinks. It's got like it's seen by the search algorithms themselves as a reputable source. Therefore, they're going to put it up high because they don't want to put some rickety source because they don't want to be like not liable, but they don't want to like Google doesn't want to lose trust. You know what I'm saying? Well, and also like if you Google search a business, it doesn't give you an Instagram page. It doesn't give you a TikTok account, right? It's going to give you a legitimate landing page to a business that has all of those SEO things that you're talking about, right? Right. Well, and the SEO things go a little further. I won't get too crazy with it because again, this can be a topic in itself. But long story short, if you have a website, because I know a lot of dog trainers don't at all. Like I know a lot of dog trainers have like just Facebooks or whatever. But I know a lot of dog trainers don't have websites, which is weird. Yeah, it is weird. Honestly, it is. But a lot of dog trainers do have they have a website, but the SEO ain't there. So you would never know they have a website. And what I mean is when I was saying backlinks, this is what I mean. In order to make your website, according to the algorithm, appear safe, let's say, or respectable, or however you want to put it, something that I would want to put up high in a search result, part of it is traction, but the other part of it, which helps you get traction, is how many other reputable, known, safe businesses believe in your business. And the way to do that would be something like this. If I've got a website, what's one very solid backlink? Google. I can make a Google business page. You know what's another very solid backlink? Yelp. I can make a Yelp page. Here's one that nobody fucking thinks of, but everybody needs this. If you hire an SEO company, this is part of what they're doing. the white pages is still a thing. And they, but it's digital now.
LinkedIn is still a thing.
LinkedIn is still a thing. The Better Business Bureau, like there's all these respected, established companies that if your website is cited in these other websites, those are backlinks. It's like writing a research paper and citing sources that are like provable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're proving your case. You're giving your evidence. And because you have those backlinks, Google or Bing or Yelp or whatever, they see this and they go, oh, this website's legit. You know how I know? Because all these other legit websites say they're legit. So backlinks are very important. It's a huge part of SEO. And the more backlinks you have, the more it puts you up higher, which means you get seen, which means traction, which means you get seen. Like it's this whole steamroll of a process.
100%. And it seems like a lot of work, but again, it's about claiming making your presence known, right? It's just like anything else, right? Like if I was a dog, there's a Google tree, there's a Yelp tree, there's a LinkedIn tree, there's an Instagram tree, and I'm going to pee on all of those trees, right? Just to go, we're dog people. Come on, we get that. So we got to make sure that that we put our scent in the air. We got to make sure that our presence is known, right? And that's ultimately my analogy for creating an online presence. So
that has to be the new jiu-jitsu analogy, is pissing on stuff, dude.
You got to piss on stuff. That's what it is. If there's a tree, pee on it. That's how it works.